Merhaba arkadaşlarım, bu J.Ryan San Francisco'dan size belirsiz zamanları yönetme konusunda bir satış atölyesi getirmekten çok heyecanlıyım.
Just kidding. I don't really speak Turkish, and I probably don't need this inside, but I was so excited when my friends at Innogate asked me to join you and share a few ideas about how to make it through uncertain times, especially as you think about your startup sales. When I talk to people and I say I talk about startup sales, sometimes they go, yeah, startup sales. But most of the time they say, startup sales? We have to do startup sales? Startup sales can be uncertain even in the most certain times. So especially now, where we're in this global pandemic, everybody is not sure about what they're doing. And I'm going to share 4 quick tips that's going to help you understand your sales process better and know what to focus on during these times. Because this uncertainty exists because people are worried about sales, like being that guy, being the guy at the auto park or in the bazaar who's trying to hit you up and sell you something. Nobody here wants to be sold to. I don't want to be sold to, and my guess is that you probably don't want to be sold to either, which is when someone says it's time to focus on sales, you think, do I have to do that? But I don't think it has to be this way. My name is Ryan Williams. I'm an executive coach based in San Francisco. And over the last 4 years, I have traveled to 14 countries, worked with over 500 CEOs at 20 accelerators, including my friends at Innogate. Istanbul was one of my favorite trips. The most fun part of my job, however, has been that I got to see 0 to 100 million revenue at 3 different startups. Once as an operator, later as an advisor for a company called Envision, and as a coach, I've seen my clients make this jump. Now, I'm also a global keynote speaker, so I've given talks at places like Salesforce and Stanford, and I'm a visiting faculty member at Berkeley. Visiting lecturer. They haven't made me faculty yet, but I'm working on it. But today, we're going back to my roots as a sales leader. I spent 12 years in Silicon Valley working for a variety of startups to come to market and find predictable sales. Sometimes that worked, and sometimes it didn't. And I'm here to share a little bit about you. Now, here's the thing. I love giving talks, but the reason I do it is to meet people like yourself. And because we can't meet physically right now, I'd like you to reach out over LinkedIn. Quick, send me a note. Tell me what you liked or didn't like about this workshop, because I would love to hear from you. Seriously, let's connect. Here's the URL. Come find me on LinkedIn. All right, ready? You ready to get in? Okay, let's go. Tip 1, reverse engineer your ideal customer profile. This tip used to be something that I saved for more advanced audiences, people who had already got the basics. But today I'm saying move it to the first step. The first thing we need to worry about is getting our ideal customer right. How do we do that? We reverse engineer it. Let's dive in. So you can't sell to everybody. Even if you pitch the accelerator or the VC or your boss on the fact that you've got a huge market, you're global, you're enormous, you're going to sell to the $800 billion US transportation market. That's great if that's the goal, but that's not where startup sales happens. It's not the total addressable market we're worried about. It's not even the target market that we focus on. We come down even smaller and we think about founders doing outreach to just a handful of companies. Now, what makes this work is that these companies are where your pattern exists. So we're going to sell to companies that all have some core things in common. That becomes the ideal customer profile. Now, I'll be more specific about what this looks like. Here's an ideal customer profile. Let's say you're Yelp and you want to focus on restaurants that have less than 10 employees in San Francisco or Boston. Okay. Now, if this is your audience that you're focused on, you probably know a few different things, right? You know that you're going to be able to reach the owner. There's less than 10 employees, so being able to talk to the owner of a restaurant isn't that crazy. At Yelp, their product is an advertisement, so they're reaching out and they're saying, hey, you should advertise on our website. Also, if you be more specific and you say, I'm just going to reach out to restaurants, that's one thing. There's a lot of restaurants. San Francisco has more restaurants per capita than any other U.S. city. We love our restaurants. Hopefully they all stay healthy during this crisis because we can't wait to go back out. If you be more specific about the ideal customer profile and you say, I'm going to target restaurants who are also already advertising and already having reviews on a social site like Yelp, then now you've got people who are really understanding of what you do. They know why you do it, and they've seen some results. Be it good or bad, they've seen some results. So that means the conversation is going to be all that better. Now, here's what I mean about reverse ICP. So to reverse engineer your ICP, what I want you to do is I want you to take your 5 best customers. 5 best customers today, not pre-crisis. 5 best customers today. Who is super excited to continue using your service? Or who do you think will be? And if you haven't sold yet, and you're really nervous about selling for the first time, target the 5 companies that you thought about when you designed your product offering. This is who we care about today. Now we're going to write the name of the company. We're going to identify things like industry, number of employees, the location, as well as the title of the person who's going to use the product, and maybe even the title of the person who's going to buy the product. That might be different people. A lot of times it is, especially in enterprise sales. We also list maybe the complementary tools they use, some trigger events and custom data. Here's an example of a trigger event. A trigger event would be like saying, I want to talk to companies that have a new chief technology officer. If a chief technology officer is within the first 2 months of their job, what is their job? It's to figure out if you're on the right platform. So if I'm selling AWS or Google Cloud or one of those other tools, then naturally it's going to make sense for me to say, hey, if you're replatforming, let's have a conversation. So take your 5 best customers today, or who you think your 5 best customers are, and figure out what the patterns are. And then write that out as your ideal customer profile. Because when you write that out, you're going to be able to see this is the profile of the people we need to reach out to today. Not the people we needed to reach out to a month ago. Not the people still in the pipeline from January. Today, the people who are the best fit for new customers, that secret lies in your current customers. Tip 2, know your buyer's process. I'm serious about this. Now, your buying process has probably changed quite a bit. Here's what I mean by this. Here's a typical sales process. Our sales process, we're going to find someone's email, we're going to send them a note, we're going to get a 30-minute discovery call. Get it booked, we tell them how great we are. We map it out and we say, hey, are you the one who has the buyer's authority to purchase my product? And they say, yes, of course I am, but my boss also wants to be involved. We've mapped their organization. We say, well, why don't you and your boss come to a demo next week and I'll do a screen share. Is that sounding familiar? I hope it's sounding familiar. And then we ask for the order. We say, hey, if you liked what you saw in the demo, let's have your credit card, or send me a purchase order, or close the deal. And then we onboard them as customers. This is a typical sales process. Now, there are some nuances, but let's talk about what a typical buying process is. If you've ever been at a company where you're responsible to buy stuff, especially a bigger company, you know that it's not that simple. You have to find a vendor. You do your due diligence. You talk to other people in the space. After you talk to them, you come back to that first vendor, and then maybe you learn a little more. You make the case to purchasing. You make the case to your boss, then you probably make the case to purchasing. Then maybe you even create an RFP and they say, oh, we actually want you to request other proposals. If you've worked at a big company, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, ask a friend who works at a big company how they buy stuff. It's almost comical how many steps they go through. And here's the part that really breaks my heart. Startups often don't take time to learn the buyer's process, which means your buying process usually doesn't line up. It should, though. If you can tailor your sales process to line up with the same process your buyer is going to go through, then you get to a place where really cool stuff can happen. Let's talk about what that means. That means that you have interviewed your current customers and you said, hey, if you were to buy our product today, what would be different? They might say something like, well, now we're going to do RFPs, or our budget's locked down so we wouldn't even be able to buy it, or my budget's locked down, I probably wouldn't be able to approve anything over $10,000. When they tell you these things, you're going to map them out and then custom the sales process for that. I just spoke to a client a minute ago, and they were telling me that their best customers all love the product, but they have restrictions. They said, well, if you bought us today, what would happen? They said, well, we'd buy you today, but we wouldn't be able to spend more than $20,000 on the pilot. Now, usually their average selling price is around $100,000. So this is a real problem to have that pilot cut all the way down to about 1/5. So what do? They're now designing a sales process around doing smaller pilots. Because if their best customers couldn't buy them today, who can? I want you to think through the same stuff. Tip 3. Still with me? I want you to start thinking about how you staff up accordingly. This doesn't mean go fire everybody, and I know that that's what a lot of companies are having to do right now. But this mostly means take a hard look at what your sales process requires. Okay, remember we just built out the buying process, and then we matched it with a sales process that made sense, which means when we think about hiring a sales development rep or an account executive or a sales engineer, we can match it up to our process. If our process matches what our customers need, they're going to talk to the right people. What does this mean in the time of crisis? Well, in this example, a qualification card, you might have a sales development rep. Sales development rep is the most junior job on the sales team. Typically, it's somebody who's within a couple years out of school. They call you up. They say, hey, are you interested? You say yes. They say, great. Let me get an appointment with somebody who knows the industry, the product, and can sell this to you. That's not a bad process most days. It might not work for your clients today. Your clients today might really need an outreach from the CEO who knows a lot about the industry, who knows a lot about the product, who's been building something and a technical expert in this field for a long time. So maybe your process shouldn't start with a sales development rep. Maybe it should start with the CEO, reaching out and saying, hey, I'm an industry expert in this thing. I think that you might need what we do. Do you have a few minutes so I can talk to your CEO? And now that deal has been sponsored at the top to qualify. The CEOs have talked and they've said, yes, we can do a small pilot. We can try something out. Even though we're trying to reserve expenses, this might be the way to go. People are still buying. They are buying differently. This is our last one. This is tip number 4. Okay? Hopefully you've stayed with me this whole time. I want you to focus on your customers, but I want you to focus on really your best customers. Now, this isn't about sales as much as it's about growing revenue through your current accounts. If I put these 4 logos up and I said, these are 4 of your customers, who are the best customers? Now, you might not recognize some of them. Coca-Cola, I know you know about. Stripe is a pretty big, over $1 billion startup here in the US. Oscar, same thing. It's an insurance healthcare startup, also US based. And then Square, you've probably heard about. They're a little more global. So here are 4 startups, different stages. Coca-Cola, probably a little past growth stages at this point. If these are your 4 customers, who is the best customer? When I ask groups of people, they usually raise their hand and say Coca-Cola for sure. It's the best logo. They've got the most money. Now let me ask you this. If we put these logos in a grid and we group them by what their potential ability to spend is based on how they use the product, and it looked like this, Coca-Cola might spend a lot, but if they're not using your product today for the thing that it's meant to do, they're not aligned with you. Let's say you've got a machine learning tool for accountants, and Coca-Cola is a big client of yours. They spend a lot of money. They actually have 10 seats instead of the average 1 or 2 people who buy from you. They have these 10 seats, but they're not using you for their main accounting problems. They're using you for their advertising budget. You might think that they're your best client. They might be spending $100,000 a month. This might feel amazing, except if they're not using the product the way that it's intended, they're not aligned with your mission. They're not doing what you built this product to do. So therefore, they're not aligned. If they're not aligned, you can't grow that account. Now, you might want to consider a pivot and making an advertising product because Coca-Cola is using it, especially if they're one of your best clients. Hey, tell the world, hey, Coca-Cola is using this for their advertising. Coca-Cola does a lot of advertising. They're going to do that in good times and bad times. That's not what I'm arguing here. But look at this and you see our friends at Square. Okay? They're spending some money. They've got the potential to spend more. They're using the product the most aligned they could. That's your actual best customer. These are the people we're going to focus on. We're going to make sure the offering that's built for them is serving them. We're going to call them up. We're going to check in with them. We're going to be more proactive. Here's a side tip. there's something called a quarterly business review. You've probably done it internally at companies you've worked at, but a quarterly business review is about how it's going between the vendor and the client. Call them up and say, we'd like to schedule a quarterly business review early in light of the pandemic. Can everyone get on a video call? Let's talk about how the product is serving you right now. If it's not serving you right now, we'll pull the contract, no strings attached. That will get their attention. If you're confident enough to say that you'll cancel what they owe you, that will get their attention. And then spend some time and say, what are we doing right? What is going well? Where are you going in your business? How can we help align? You're already aligned, so how can we help stay aligned to your goals and make sure that you're successful? When you ask these questions, there is more budget to be had, even in tight times. I set up this grid for you. Take a quick picture on your phone. Waiting. You got it? Okay. I want you to write this down on the whiteboard or a piece of paper, and I want you to do this with the 5 best clients you identified for our first project on ICP. I want you to write their logos in here. Now I want you to think about who you should be spending the most time with. And if you wrote down some logos that aren't aligned, but are spending a lot of money, they are a distraction, even though we need that cash right now. Again, my name is J.Ryan Williams. I hope that you guys found this useful, found this a good use of time, and want to connect and spend more time together. Here's how to get a hold of me. My friends at Innogate were nice enough to sponsor this and put this up on the website, so please thank them. They're doing a lot to support you in these times, and I wish you the very, very best. Thank you.